So one thing, when I was sitting down with a lot of you doing our one-on-one goals meetings, one thing that came up several times is that, man, I have a really hard time getting back on track after I get off track. So we say, I'm on the wagon or I'm off the wagon. And when I fall off the wagon, it takes me weeks to get back on, right? So that's what I'm going to address today. And part of the way that we address this is by knowing that your fitness journey is going to be lifelong. Like, it's forever. It's not a destination. It's something that's going to continue as long as you live. It's always going to be evolving and always going to be changing, but it's never just going to stop. So if you think of it that way, when you take a week off, say you're on vacation, or you go off plan on your nutrition plan for, a week or two, when you look at it in the span of a lifetime, guys, that's just a little blip on the radar, right? So we shouldn't make it as big of a deal as we do, knowing that this is a lifelong journey and it's going to be, forever. So this little spot, this little day, 2 days, a week here and there is really not that big in the grand scheme of things, right? So I think removing some of the guilt that comes along with falling off the wagon is part of making it easier to get back on track. Because when we make ourselves feel guilty and we fall into that slump and we're like, man, I'm a failure, never gonna get this right, then we're constantly in that yo-yo, that cycle that I'm up for a while, I'm way up here, and then I'm all the way down here, and I'm gonna stay down here because I don't like myself very much, because again, I'm not keeping my promises to myself, I don't know why I always do this, and we go in that hole. So one way, like I said, to make sure that it's easier to get back on the wagon is to not guilt yourself when you do take a day off or a couple of days off or even a week off, okay? So that's one, remove the guilt because it's just a blip on your radar, all right? Number two is hop back on as soon as possible, okay? So if you have a cheat meal one night, and I hate that term, but if you have an off-plan meal one night, next day, just hop right back on. You don't need to do more cardio. You don't need to starve yourself the next day. It's this compensatory, it's a cycle that we fall into when we think we did something bad and now we have to punish ourselves. Guys, exercise is not a punishment. Eating right is not a punishment, okay? We are trying to fuel our bodies to the best of our abilities to achieve our goals, okay? So punishing ourselves for doing something we think was bad is just perpetuating that negative cycle of I'm not good at fitness, fitness is hard, I feel bad about myself when I'm in the gym. All of that starts to ruminate when we get on this repetitive, treadmill of I'm never gonna be good enough, right? So when you do go off plan, get right back on, okay? The next day, you wake up, guess what? It's a brand new day. You should have temporary amnesia, guys, seriously. Just forget about what happened. Maybe you had an emotional eating episode, or you skipped the gym last night because you just weren't feeling yourself, stuff like that. Forget about it, all right? Again, little blip on the radar because we're gonna be doing this for the rest of our life. So just hop right back on plan. It'll be much better if you get back on as quick as possible. And guys, this is the only way I've been able to sustain the results that I've had. Because I will tell you, there have been days, there have been weeks, there have been months when I don't do what I should. I don't do my programming, I don't do my plan, but I have that ability to just forget about it and move on and do what I know I need to do to get to where I want to be. And I hope you guys can get there as well, knowing that the sooner I get on, the sooner I can get on with getting my results, okay? If you find yourself falling off the wagon a lot, it may be time to revise your plan or take a look at what you're doing and say, is this really feasible? Is this really manageable at this point in my life? And guys, there should be no guilt at all involved with that, because your fitness journey is going to have ebbs and flows. There's going to be times when it's more important and times when it's less important, and times when you can really stick to your nutrition pretty well, and times when it's not really a priority. And that's just life, guys. Your career is that way, your relationships are that way, nothing is ever here or here. That's just not the way it works, okay? So be flexible with it and make sure you're going with the flow. And if you're like, man, I cannot make it to the gym for an hour a day, 5 days a week, like that's just not happening at this point in my life. You're like, okay, well, what can you commit to? What are you 90% positive that you can achieve on a weekly basis? What can you be most consistent with? and go do that, okay? I'm not telling you to lower your expectations of yourself. I'm just trying to tell you to be realistic so you can be consistent, all right? And ask yourself what you can see yourself doing for the rest of your life, because this is a lifelong thing, right? So we want to make sure that we're doing things that are sustainable, okay? Last but not least, and this is my favorite piece of advice today, I call it living in the gray. So let's look at it this way. If you have a cookie, and say maybe you're tracking macros, or you're counting calories or whatnot, and you have a cookie, and that cookie was on plan. Like, you planned for that cookie, and it was so good that you had another cookie, okay? So you had 2 cookies, and now you're no longer on plan. What do most of us do? We're gonna go have 5 more cookies because we're already off plan, so we might as well just blow it, right? Okay, this is where I want you to stop and say, okay, I had 1 cookie, it was on plan. I had 2 cookies, that wasn't really on plan, but I'm gonna do the next best thing, and I'm gonna stop here at 2 cookies, right? So it's always, don't slash all 4 tires just because 1 is flat, right? So we wanna keep that ball rolling as much as possible and mitigate the damage, not make it worse, okay? So there's this gray area we need to live in, okay? Over here is like, I'm on plan, I'm 100%, I'm all in all the time, and nobody can live here, okay? Absolutely nobody. I don't care what they tell you, they're lying. Even if it's maybe for a very, very short period of time, but never sustainably for the long term, okay? This is like maybe a contest prep diet, somebody who's severely dieting for a show, which, body fat percentage at that point is not maintainable. That's what this extreme is over here. And then the other side of this is, I'm gonna go off the walls and I'm gonna eat everything, okay? So we need to find somewhere in the middle of that, somewhere in this gray, that's gonna allow us to, number 1, feel good about ourselves, but number 2, mitigate the damage when we can't stay on plan. So what I like to ask myself is, okay, what's the next best option? If I say I didn't plan ahead and now I have to go out to eat, well, what's the next best option? If I pull through Chick-fil-A or Panera or even McDonald's, I can order a side salad and a chicken breast at McDonald's, guys. I can, and so can you. And that's a choice that we make every time we go through the drive-thru, right? So there are healthier choices out there. So if you can't do what plan A was, what is the next best choice, all right? Guys, I hope that was helpful to you. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below. I would love to hear from you guys. But if you're struggling right now, because it's about that, I don't know, almost 3-week mark for most of you, getting on your New Year's resolutions, your goals for the year. And this is about the time when stuff gets really, really hard. So if you've struggled with falling on and off the wagon, sit down, ask yourself if what you've agreed to or what you have set out to do is maintainable or sustainable. And then after that, if you're cool with that, make sure you're just doing the next best thing every single time. If you can't stay completely on plan, just do that next right thing, okay? All right, guys, have an awesome Friday, and we will see you soon.